Damon Delaney, for the second time, let's be honest, we've done this twice. We had a technical problem. Hello.
Hey, Joe, how are you? Good morning.
You've already said good morning. Just gone through the motions here.
My wooden acting performance.
Hi, Joe. Morning. Let's talk about this red card then, which is so contentious. Wolves 0, Arsenal 1. Miles Lewis-Skelly on the receiving end. And for instance, Alan Shearer, this is one of the worst decisions I've seen in a very long time. There's no speed or intensity to the tackle. He's not endangering an opponent 90 yards away from goal. One of the worst decisions I've seen in a long time. And the PGMOL have come out to say, appalled by the abhorrent abuse, including death threats to Michael Oliver and his family. Police have launched a number of investigations. Now, look, I would presume that they're just morons who could barely leave the house, let alone do something terrible to Michael Oliver. But that's easy for me to say when I'm not on the receiving end of those threats. So it's all very, very ugly. Arteta, naturally, I mean, when is he not fuming? But he was fuming. You're sort of in the minority here, so talk to us. You thought it was justifiably a red. Maybe not a nailed-on red, but justifiably?
Yeah, I think it's justifiable. There's a number of factors the referee has to take into account before he gives a red card. It's not his opinion. There's obviously a set of rules. Is it a high tackle? I think it does. It was high. There's no question that Studs catch him on his calf, then proceeds down to his ankle, onto his instep. Studs are showing. There's no attempt. It's not a tackle. And to describe this as a tackle is incorrect because the ball is gone. It's a professional foul. You're trying to stop a counter-attack. And in my book, I would say that if you're trying to stop a counter-attack, there's a number of ways you can do it without endangering the safety of an opponent. You can pull a jersey, you can tap his ankles, you can obstruct him, you can put a hand on the shoulder. He doesn't do any of that. And he comes in and the high-angle camera at Molineux from distance, when it initially happened, we all thought it was just a trip. But the low camera angle that's looking in from Matt Doherty's side clearly shows that he doesn't clip his ankles. The studs make contact with his calf. No, it's high, it's late, there's intent. Probably the only bar that it doesn't reach for me would be the force. There's not a huge amount of force in it. But if you look at the referee, he's 4 yards away. And if anybody, and I understand that when a lot of people came out, and I think there seemed to be kind of a misunderstanding that it was possibly because it was denying of a goal-scoring opportunity or something along those lines. So when I looked at it initially from a high-angle camera, I thought to myself, yeah, that's just an ankle tap, but it's just the lower angle. You can see that he clearly makes contact, studs on calf, down onto the instep. And in this day and age, it is a red card, unfortunately. There was an incident last season. John McGinn got sent off for a wild swipe on Udogie, trying to stop a counter-attack. Studs weren't showing, but there was a lot of force, and he ankle tapped him, but there was excess force. I was working the Atletico Madrid game for Virgin during the week, doing commentary, and Atletico had a player sent off after half an hour, Barrios, for something very, very similar, and everybody agreed afterwards that it was a tight call, but when you go to ground and you raise your studs, even if you're trying to ankle tap him or take him out, you can't show your studs. Right, fire back at me, Joe, because I'm sure you have a lot to fire back at.
No, initially I was in the Mark Scott, the match of the day commentator position, where I just thought it was a cynical stop the attack ankle tap kind of a tackle. And I thought, well, it's just a yellow. He's taken his yellow. It's a good foul for the team. And then I saw the red straight away because it was striking that Oliver came in with the red. There was no hesitation in his mind. He came in with the red. And I wish he couldn't think that's a goal-scoring opportunity. There's two players on the cover. They're not, 70 yards away from goal. And then actually, it was funny. We were we're in a WhatsApp group, and you sent through the angle of the studs first on the kind of shin, even shin calf, and then they rake down. And so I'm kind of struggling to argue too vehemently against you, and because the first screen grab I saw was after the studs had scraped down, and it was almost as if he'd gone in low, and it was a really it was a well timed ankle tap. But look, when his studs are that high and they make contact with his leg, and I accept the point you've made, it wasn't ferocious force. The force was never going to break Matt Doherty's leg, but at the same time, when the studs are that high and the ball is so far away. I'm sure that's part of Oliver's
Yeah.
thinking here. He hasn't gone like over the ball. The ball's in a different postcode. He's just trying to stop him. Then I think he gives Oliver the opportunity to send him off, and you could say it's somewhere in between yellow and red, but it's arguably a red. What's so surprising, I suppose, is the level of vitriol headed Michael Oliver's way when you lay it out the way you have.
Yeah, and listen, I think there's a number of things to take into account here. It's not a tackle, it's a professional foul. He's wiping a player out, and you can't do it that way. But Arsenal fans are extremely upset, and I do have some sympathy for them. I will say that. They have been on the receiving end of some very, very tough decisions. And all the decisions they've been on the receiving end of, you can make a case that to the letter of the law, they're all accurate decisions, but nobody else gets punished as stringently or held to the standard of the letter of the law as much as what Arsenal have done this season. Even the penalty at Brighton, there's a case to be made that the defender's head got a touch on the ball, a fraction of a slight touch, but a slight touch is enough with your foot. So I can understand. So Arsenal fans at the moment are amped up. They feel like the world, well, not maybe the world, but the PGMOL are against them or certain referees. So any decision that's even remotely close to the, I wouldn't even say 50-50, 60-40, they're screaming, saying nobody else gets done with this, and Arsenal fans' main defence is essentially, from what I've seen, is that they're putting forward cases of they've been unjustly treated this year, and I agree they have a point, and they're also putting forward cases of other tackles of a similar nature that weren't punished with a red card. Most notably, the mistake Michael Oliver made on Saturday with João Gomez. That's a straight red card, not a second yellow card. So that's the mistake that Michael Oliver makes. That has to be, because that is equally, now that had force and that had intent in it as well. He'll argue that it was a genuine attempt to play for the ball, but that's a straight red card. I think that was Michael Oliver's mistake. So I think Arsenal's argument, it holds a little bit of weight, but I need to separate all that and just take the incident in itself, like the incident and nothing else. Nothing else that's happened to Arsenal this year, or nothing else that's happened to another player this year. And so far, they didn't get punished as severely as what Lewis-Skelly did on the weekend.
Yeah, the game generally quite striking. Wolves, when you think about it, both teams down to 10 men. They're only 1-0 down. That last 10 minutes, there should be a degree of fans with the team, and let's push for a winner, and let's create some chances and a little bit of anarchy and see what happens. So they've lost 4 in a row now. The stadium almost turned on them. It's like, this is such a pathetic effort to get an equaliser. It was like grumbles and anger and not pleasant at all.
Yeah, that's an awkward place to go and play. I haven't gone there many times. They are difficult fans. And they're frustrated because they're in the relegation zone or in and around it. They've lost their manager. They've a new guy in. Results don't seem to be, had an initial uptick with the Manchester United game, but they seem to have dropped off now. So there is a huge amount of lethargy around that whole football club at the moment. And that happens when you're in the relegation zone and you're not getting results, because everybody wants to be in the Premier League. Everyone wants to stay in the Premier League. And Wolves are obviously now fearing for their safety, that they don't want to go back into the Championship. So I can feel them, but that's where they need to kind of put that to one side and support their team as best they possibly can, because that was not a good Arsenal performance for me. Take the incident out of it. I don't think Arsenal played well. We covered the game on Premier. Once you take Saka or Odegaard out of the team, they're struggling. You take both of them out of the team, and you've got nothing in attack. It's just hopeful stuff more than anything else, which is a shame, because when you look at the options that Liverpool have at the top end of the pitch, they've got 6 players for 4 positions, and with the exception of Salah, it's very, very difficult to predict what their best front three is. But they have those options, and the same players aren't getting flogged every week, with the exception of Salah, but he wants to play. But I mean, they're able to rotate the squad. When you look at Arsenal now, they've got a superb midfield, Declan Rice and Thomas Partey. They have the best partnership in the Premier League right now in Saliba and Gabriel. When you get them together, they've got a super competent goalkeeper. I think Calafiori is obviously new to the club. He may develop into a really, really good player. But the ingredients are all there for Arsenal. They just don't have enough options at the top end of the pitch. Unfortunately, Trossard, and again, the bar for Arsenal is winning the league, winning Champions League. Your Trossards, your Martinellis, your Marinos, your Gabby Jesuses, your Zinchenkos, all the players they spent pretty sizable chunks of money on over the last number of years. just haven't come in and elevated him to the next level. Declan Rice came in and brought that football club along instantly. I know he's had a tough opening half to the season, but he has undoubtedly, brought that Arsenal team on. The two centre-backs have, the goalkeeper has, Odegaard has, Saka has. There's just not enough of those players in the top end of the pitch. I really hope they go and break the bank and go and sign a number 9 or a world-class winger, or they do go and get Cunha out of Wolves, because they are players that can, move the football club along.
The Saturday half-5 game was a 3-1 win for Manchester City against Chelsea. He is still the story to an extent, but I think happily for him, and everybody's kind of relieved on his part, Abdulkadir Kuzanov is not now the story in the way he would have been if Chelsea had won the game. So he gets to go away and recuperate a little bit away from the limelight. So this guy's the new signing this month, 20 years of age. He's thrown straight into the team. This is a struggling team. He's got Matheus Nunes as his right back. Nunes is not a right back. He was badly exposed during the week against PSG. And he has one of the more dramatic meltdowns in the first 5, 6, 7 minutes that a player ever has, really. He gave away the goal, again, in terrible fashion. In a way, I suspect, if he's got to this point in his career, he's not in the habit of making these kinds of mistakes. In terrible fashion, gave away the ball routinely, yellow card picked up for, after giving away the ball and then lunging tackle. And I think what made everybody feel sorry for him were the close-ups, and he's kind of baby-faced and he's talking to himself. So, what the fuck's going on? It's that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And what struck me, and you'd be able to relate to this, I suppose, is, sport's all about levels, and most of us bow out at a level long before you ever did. But it struck me that Kusanov, throughout his entire life, has probably been the best player on the pitch, or one of them, and is in command of the space. It must have been so jarring and weird for him to be like, oh my God, I'm having a car crash here.
Yeah, it wasn't pretty, and I did feel for the kid. But what I will say in his defence is I thought he settled quite well and he had a reasonable game after that. Okay. It was a terrible start. Now, just to take you through the logistics of his last couple of weeks, Man City, one of the biggest clubs in the world, have paid for him. They've flown him over. He's living out of a hotel. He has a million requests. He's, shirt things to do. He has media to do. He has been the very definition of a whirlwind 10 days for him, right? There's an awful lot on his mind. You're living out of a hotel. You're taken out of your routine. Your diet's slightly off. And you probably think you're going to come in and get a couple of weeks to train, bed in, find your new teammates, and you find out, no, you're playing. And not only that, you're playing against Chelsea at the Etihad, and there's a lot to take on board. There's an awful lot of information coming into his mind. So I understand that he probably was a little bit lacking focus, shall we say. And that is a difficult thing. That is a thing, especially for a young boy, an experienced player that's experienced that situation before in terms of moving clubs, going into a new change room, meeting your new teammates. You're trying to remember everybody's name, everybody on the staff. The managers has you in the office for 20 minutes, talking through tactics, your roles, responsibility, the expectation. You're up, you're training, you're back to the hotel. So it's a lot. But you say that the kid is obviously, the best player of his age group. You don't get to where he's got to without having some resilience. Like, the kid will have it. He will have experienced some form of difficulty. It hasn't been plain sailing. It's not for anybody. I think that's a myth. Everybody at every age group will have had some sort of a setback and will have to demonstrate perseverance, determination, and a will to dig in when the going gets tough. And that kid undoubtedly has that. Man City wouldn't have signed him if he didn't, So I think he's going to be a super player. Speaking to people that have watched him play, I haven't seen much of him, but especially playing in international tournaments, by all accounts, he is the real deal.
Right.
And in some way, he made the mistake. They won the game. And I promise you, when you make a mistake like that and you win, the next day is an awful lot more pleasant, because it's almost the kind of whereas when you make that mistake and you lose, especially when you're new to the changing room, you feel like everyone's looking at you, they're blaming you, this has gone wrong. Trust me, it's an awful lot easier to swallow when you win the game of football. Yeah. And Pep will settle him down and say, hey, listen, we're going to get you settled in your house and get you organised.
And his teammates were pretty good to him, Again, you could give us a sense of what it's like if you've ever been in that position. That might not always be the case. You'd like to think it would generally with a 20-year-old, but they were talking to him. He was given a huge ovation when he was eventually substituted. And thankfully for him, it was like in the second half and not like an embarrassment substitution. And I thought there were even little things, like when he was shaking the ball the first 15, 20 minutes, Bernardo Silva in particular, he went very deep and started taking the ball and started taking a bit of pressure off him. And I did watch Silva and thought, that is just a really good professional who has a sense of this situation.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he needed. You've hit the nail on the head there. That's perfect. Um, they would have recognized that he's a kid. He's 20. Not only is he, making his debut, he probably has the whole weight of his country at home on his shoulders
Yeah.
because he will now be the new poster boy in his home country, the first player from that country to play in the Premier League. So he has a lot to deal with. And that's why you have experienced players in the changing room, fellas to tell him, hey, don't worry about it. It happens to us all. There's no problem. And I'm sure when they come in this morning for the recovery session, they'll be laughing and joking and arm around him and say, hey, don't worry, it happens to all of us, right? So all of a sudden, they're helping him. They're not, staring at him. And that's a good culture in a changing room. You need to do that with young kids. When it happens to an experienced player, and it's happened to me, I have the tools to deal with it. I have the tools to take a deep breath, settle yourself down and say, okay, it's a mistake. Deal with it after the game. Let's just get through this 90 minutes. And I've made some awful mistakes in my time. Can run through them if you want at some stage, Joe. But it is difficult. But once you have a level of experience, you learn how to deal with that. And you have the tools to deal with it. And I'm sure that kid will be made to feel at home. It'll almost be a funny thing, with the players. They'll be laughing at him, kind of putting him at ease. There's no judgment here. It happens to all of us,
Yeah.
So listen, I think he's going to be super signing. Just one last point on that is City recognised probably in October they needed a rebuild when it was falling apart, and they've signed 3 players, already, and 2 of them went straight into the starting lineup. So their rebuild is well and truly underway, and that's the ruthless kind of decision making. Kyle Walker out of the building, there'll be others go. That's the ruthless decision making that you don't see or haven't seen at Manchester United. Players are clearly past it, not moving them on quickly enough, not getting them out of the building in a quiet fashion. It doesn't have to be a big front page story. Just get them out of the building. And that's Kyle Walker is gone. I'm sure Bernardo Silva will be next. Gundogan will be next. There'll be several others go. And the new cycle of success will be starting at City. And that's what I like about City. They are devastatingly efficient.
Yeah. Marmoush, the other player to start, and he looked very lively. So you said there, towards the end of your career, you developed tools. So Delaney makes absolute clangor, has a horror 5 minutes, has given away a goal. Where did you go to stop yourself going under? Your reference there, just I'll deal with it tomorrow. That was one of the things you told yourself?
Yeah, listen, there was, I think 2016, I'll give you an example. I scored an own goal at Old Trafford after...
Describe the own goal for us in detail.
Yeah, I will. It was a horrific own goal. It was you know what it was? It was the worst kind of goal. It was a lazy own goal where they went down the left-hand side. I was at the near post. Ball got fizzed across between myself and the goalkeeper. If you're focused and concentrated, you just shuffle your feet side to side and you get that ball back where it came from. Instep, biggest part of your foot, safest part. But I crossed over with my left leg to try and hook it away with my left foot. Ball skidded off the turf, skidded off my foot into the net. And I just knew straight away, I just went, that is the worst. I mean, there's own goals that are, happens and you can't get over it. But that was just lazy, pure lazy, unconcentrated. And just straight away there, your mind just goes, okay, you've got 95 minutes left. This can be like the worst night of your life, or you can just take a deep breath now and you can have a good old cry for yourself afterwards, and that's just the way I parked it. And I think they call that compartmentalizing.
Yeah.
And you just say, look, you can have a good old cry afterwards on the bus, and you can ring your mum and she can tell you you're still great, while everyone else tells you you're useless. And that's pretty much it. And you do have to be able to park that, and then you kind of go, okay, let's put that to one side. Let's salvage some semblance of a performance out of this. You're never going to have a good game after that.
Yeah.
You need to stop having that catastrophic one. So it's almost just a deep breath and a reset. But once you experience, you have those tools because you've experienced things like that before. A 20-year-old kid, I think he done okay.
Yeah.
He'll be the stronger for it.
Just to mention, by the way, so City went man for man high line, and Chelsea did rather went man for man high line, and Ederson didn't really need asking twice. He saw Haaland in a 1-on-1 with a 30-yard circle around him, and player marking him, and said okay, and that was how Haaland scored the second. And then for Foden's third, again it was Ederson to De Bruyne, who flicked it on to Haaland. And then he sometimes his footballing skills are critiqued a little bit. It was a lovely little pass for Foden, who was running from deep, and that must be nice for City to score goals which don't take 100 passes in 5 minutes.
I love it. I can't tell you how happy I was to watch those goals go in. I think it was only a couple of weeks ago with you, Joe, and I raised the point that I think we need to do more from Haaland. Haaland needs to give more to the team, because when you're struggling and confidence is low, when you're trying to pass out those patterns and those jumping in out of different shapes and midfield players dropping in centre back and whatnot, when your confidence is low, you turn the ball over, because you're hesitant and you're not sure. And when you have a guy like him at the top end of the pitch, you need to use him, and that's exactly what they did. They just missed out the midfield. And Haaland, in fairness to him, especially, Robert Sanchez will get blamed for that goal. It was an awful decision for him to come out.
Yeah.
But the way he used his body to pin the centre back, rolled him, and then turned and ran with the intensity that he did to get himself into that position. He's a guy who's 6'5", probably weighs 100 kilos, and it just moves like probably nobody else of that size in the Premier League. So I'm delighted they did that, and especially for the little flick as well. Again, the same thing, just planted his feet, planted his body, pinned the centre back, and then just a lovely little flick off for Phil Foden. If you have that top end of the pitch, I don't see any reason to not use it. There'll come a time when the confidence will come back and Ederson can start threading balls and giving it to defenders, and there's a feel-good factor about the team. But if you have him at the top end of the pitch, I don't see anything wrong with spinning balls down the side and getting yourself up the pitch.
Manchester United beat Fulham last night at Craven Cottage.
Did they?
It wasn't the most exciting game. I know you watched it. It was pretty tough going, but they got the result. By way of veering into Ruben Amorim's public pronouncements, which are the most box office thing, I think, in about Manchester United in some ways at the moment, there was interesting a piece of intel from Mark Ogden, UK-based journalist, which maybe encapsulates Manchester United in a nutshell at the moment. So he was just talking about a contact at the club that he had. And he was saying to this person, why is it that like when Arsenal go to the States or when Liverpool go to the States, Liverpool will link up with their sister club at Fenway and there'll be that kind of thing. Why do United never go to Tampa? He was asking this person at the club. And he says, I was told it's quite simply because the owners didn't want the United squad to see how good the Tampa Bay facilities were. They didn't want him to see the training ground because the training ground at Tampa is state of the art. They opened a new training ground back in 2022. They had spent 70 million on it. The stadium's a top stadium, and the Glazers have put a lot of money into the facility at Tampa. And if the players had gone to the Tampa training ground and realised what they had and what United don't have, there would have been a mutiny at the club. So it's just... it just never ends. They are upgrading Carrington at the moment, so they'll get there. That's sort of on foot of the Ronaldo complaints a couple of years ago when he was saying how terrible it was.
Yeah.
So, you've been in a dressing room. You'd have a better sense of us as to how they might receive Amorim's public comments. Last week, it was very much they are the worst team in the history of the club. He could have said, we're not in a good moment, we're faring badly, this club expects better. But he went for like a headline writer's dream. And then this week, again, he's asked about Rashford and his continued omission, not even on the subs bench. And, he says we could have used him, like that bit of pace, it would have been handy, but I'm not seeing enough in training. And frankly, I would sooner put my 63-year-old goalkeeping coach on the bench than Rashford. So again, it's not just, training effort needs to improve. He's adding extra heat to it almost. It's like, thank you very much, say headline writers everywhere. What do you make of this?
I'll tell you exactly what he's doing. He is creating a situation where it is back me or sack me. So he is coming out and he is not towing the line at all. And the reason he said that is the worst Manchester United team possibly of all time is that he wants nothing to do with that team. And the sooner he moves 90% of the players on there and gets his own ones in, the better. So he is almost saying that, like, this is not what I signed up for. So him coming out and saying those statements is basically saying, I'm not going to toe the line, perhaps maybe like Eric Ten Hag did, and, it will be a slowly evolution over revolution thing. He is going direct to revolution, and a bloody one at that. He has not got any patience to wait around and let the club sort it out. He is sticking it firmly on their toes right now and saying, look, you fix this and get me what I want and move on the players that I don't want, the ones that I've told you that I don't want, or you get rid of me. And I think he would happily, if he's told that he has to endure this for 2 or 3 seasons and promises, empty promises that aren't fulfilled, then I think he would much rather just walk away from it, because he looks like a guy who doesn't suffer fools gladly. And I suppose he's expediting the situation as quickly as possible.
How does worst team in history of the club go down in a dressing room, do you think?
catastrophically bad. I mean, like that just is a terrible thing to hear. You know, that a club of Manchester United's history, rich history, to be put in that category is not nice, and it will not have helped with confidence. But as I said, I don't think he cares. I think he just wants to move on. The vast majority, or listen, there would have been a meeting behind closed doors, and a file would have been put in front of the owners to say, I need to get rid of these 6, 7 players immediately, and I need to get in these 6 or 7 players with this, not specifically names, but players with the physical, technical, tactical profile that I'm looking for, you know. And you, the sooner you do that, the sooner I'll get you what you hired me for.
Is there a danger he's going too far with the view to losing the dressing room, with the view to those players going, hang on, he's actually making a mockery of us here. So why are we breaking our backside for this guy? Surely he's because he did row back on the worst team in history. He said he shouldn't have said it. So even he seemed to realize, whoa, maybe that's too far. Whatever about the Rashford one, that's, you know, it's fairly vicious and aimed at one individual. But like the whole dressing room, I would have thought, geez, you're walking a tight line there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I think that like he realizes he's walking a tight line, and he's putting it right on the club to say, look, if you don't give me what I want and make the situation as quickly as possible, then I'm not your guy. Then you need to go and hire somebody else.
Yeah.
And I think that he is so wedded to his principles, so wedded to his belief system and his virtues that he will not bend that for anybody. And he is saying that if you don't want to give me what I need, what you told me I'd have, if you don't do it and you don't do it now, then I'm not your guy. You need to move on from me and get somebody else to do it.
No, totally. And Board would have heard that loud and clear. I suppose I'm just thinking in the short term, whether he likes it or not, he does need these players.
Can it get worse though? I mean, like
it can always get worse.
Well, in the immortal words of Mick McCarthy, we can't go on like this. It can. So listen, I don't think that squad's bad enough to get relegated, obviously, but you know, he's not settling for like a top 8 finish, green shoots, and then the owners think, no, he's working miracles with this team, and we won't do it. He's almost just laying it bare and burning it to the ground as quickly as possible just to get the change that he needs. He's just bulldozing the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
I'm not giving these owners an opportunity to think that things are better than they are. That kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
Who, by the way, so you know, you've kind of been watching the last couple of weeks. We haven't spoken in a while. Are there many in the kind of 7 or 8 that tend to be in a starting 11 now that you're thinking, yeah, definitely you're fine for the next 4, 5, 6 years? We'll keep you. Who's even to an extent impressing you?
So when you look at the way the manager plays, a system that he plays, and he's not going to change that for anybody. Every position will have a certain set of physical, technical, and tactical requirements. You know, so you have to be able to put up certain numbers to play in certain positions, like the outside centre backs. You know, Kyle Walker could play that position because you get left exposed. Because if you want to play that system, your wing backs, and this is what happened last night with Manchester United against Fulham, they end up dropping into a flat back 5, and the 3 centre backs. The 3 centre backs are just almost holding hands, right? So it becomes a flat back 5 very, very quickly, and then they can't transition out of it. Inter Milan, and I've said this several times before, are the biggest proponents of this with DeMarco and Dumfries. They can transition out of that back 5 with the speed of light. I mean, they are just incredible how quickly they can go from one 18-yard box to the other. But the outside centre backs, Bastoni for me, who, you know, maybe isn't the most talked about centre back in Europe, I am such a huge fan of his. Every time I watch him play, his reading of the game, of where he needs to be, when he needs to be, is incredible. When Inter Milan played Man City at the Etihad last year, I mean, he was left in an ocean of space with wingers, and he never got exposed once because his reading of the game, his understanding. Like the outside centre backs, I think, are the key to the whole of that system.
And where are the likes of De Ligt and Martinez on that front?
No, I don't think they can. I don't think that Harry Maguire is mobile enough, because when those outside centre backs step into midfield or they join in, watch Bastoni, he joins in and attacks, right? Because what happens then is even the ball turns over, he's in a really good position to stop the counter attack. Whereas if your 3 centre backs are back on the halfway line, when the ball pops out, there's too much space in front of them, and you get destroyed really, and that's what happens when you look at all the times Brighton and they get counter attacked on. So I think Mazraoui is one for me. I think he's mobile enough. He can play in one of the outside centre-back positions. He played there at the very start when he came in. Probably not physical enough. But I think Mazraoui is mobile enough, and I think he's technically good enough and tactically good enough to play in it. I think De Ligt is probably capable of playing in the middle of the 3 centre-backs. Right. He's one guy that does have a good reading of the game. I would probably say the reason Alejandro Garnacho is being linked with a move away from Manchester United is I don't think there's a position for him. He's not a wing back. He can't play as a wing back because when he gets back into a defensive position, he can't do it. They tried it there. So he's a chalk on your heels winger, getting the ball wide, running behind, whereas he doesn't play with that. The wing backs provide that role. Their wide players have to be tight, technical players who can play in the pitch.
And one other last one: are you, because you've been fairly down on Bruno Fernandes at times, ill-disciplined, running here, there, and everywhere. He's in a decent vein of form. Are you seeing a better Fernandes under Amorim, or still just not quite for you?
No, I don't think so. I think he's an incredibly gifted player, and he's a technically very, very good player. But I don't think he has the tactical awareness or the discipline to play in that system. I think I said it to you, where he can't play in a two in the midfield because he'll just get overrun. He vacates it. He's a joiner inner. If they're in the attack, he just loses the run of himself, which is great if you play in a system and he's got a free role and you've got two number sixes behind you, then, they can mop up behind him. But playing in a two in that role in midfield, the level of discipline, the level of awareness that you have to have of when to go, when not to go, when to stay and fill a passing lane, I don't think he has that. I don't think he can play as one of the inverted wingers that are on the inside. They've tried him there as well. I don't think he has the discipline for that either. He runs off. Right. Listen, he's a very good player. I just don't think he suits the level of discipline that Amorim is going to require. But if the rest of the team is good, they could absolve those types of weaknesses if you want to keep him. But you wouldn't be building a team around him in the manner that Amorim wants to. Top end of the pitch, Højlund, Xerxes, they probably have all the attributes that I'm saying, but they need to start showing it. That's probably about it, to be honest with you. I mean, you probably could shoehorn some guys in there that fill a gap or plug a hole for the foreseeable. So you're obviously not going to change 8 players in 2 transfer windows. It might take 3 or 4. So you are going to have to ask the likes of Amad Diallo, Diogo Dalot, sorry, to fill in and be able to play as a wing back. And then I think Ugarte can do it. Sorry, there's one I forgot. I think probably Kobe Mainu can do it. They're probably decent enough players. But I think it's the outside centre backs. Lenny Yoro, he's probably one that could. Not seen enough of him. Got tortured against, was it Bournemouth at home? Yeah. Was it that game? Like, absolutely. I mean, he is probably the prototypical outside centre backs. Like Lenny Yoro is that build, that physicality, but he can't cover the ground when he's asked to stay back in the back three. And Harry Maguire will always keep, Lenny Yoro close. Lenny Yoro needs to step in. He needs to be in the line of the midfield players. And when it's down his side, he needs to join in and create an extra body in the attack. Because at least if you step in as a right side centre back in level with Ugarte, maybe 15 yards to the right of him, when the ball turns over, you can take a forward step and stop the counter attack, and counter press is what it's called. But if you stay back next to Harry Maguire and that ball pops out, Ugarte's got too much ground to cover and he can't, and that's why they get counter attacked all the time.
It's very interesting. Manchester United are performing a public service here in that we're all getting like a tactical lesson in the intricacies of the 3-4-2-1. I've never thought so much more about a system as this one in my life. So
I've been stuck on that outside centre position, and I couldn't play it. So the reason, one last point on that, so I don't want to labour it. But the reason that system does well against Liverpool is there's an element of caution with it, right? So when they got that result against Liverpool and City, the wing backs will start from a defensive position, ready to go forward, even if they're slightly in front of the centre backs. But there's an element of caution. They won't go unless it's 100% certain. The 2 centre midfield players will sit. So there's a solidity. Everybody is comfortable because you look 5 or 10 yards to your left or right, in front of you, behind you. You have bodies. You're not being left in open space. But then you bring that system in at home to Brighton or at home to Bournemouth, and all of a sudden you've dominated the ball. Your wing backs are high wide, and all of a sudden now your centre backs are back. That's a huge chasm of space that the midfield players can't cover. So it's a good counter-attacking system, but it's not good if you're trying to. I won't say you're trying to win a league, because Conte won a league with Chelsea. But you look at that Chelsea team, the last team that in the Premier League that was successful at that, Marcos Alonso and Victor Moses. Incredible. Azpilicueta, Gary Cahill, Fabregas and Kante in the middle of the park. You'd Hazard, Pedro and Costa at the top end of the pitch. But you'd Costa, bully boy number 9 that can occupy a back 4. You'd Pedro running in behind. You'd Hazard coming into pockets. You'd Fabregas who could take the ball in the telephone box and keep it. And you Kante who was doing the work of 2 players. So, that was just one of the most Inter Milan, and that 2016 Chelsea team was incredible.
Yeah.
It was, Aspilicueta, Gary Cahill, very comfortable. David Luiz, that was the other one, sorry. Aspilicueta, very comfortable out in green grass on his own, like probably one of those quickest, mobile, best one-on-one defenders that we've seen in a long, long time. Gary Cahill, equally adept, and David Luiz, extremely mobile. So you factor all those things in, those players that play that system between Inter Milan and that 2016 Chelsea team, and then you look what Manchester United have, it doesn't quite cut it.
Yeah.
But the manager is not going to bend.
Yeah, that's a great breakdown of things. Just before we finish, is Ange finished? Is the writing on the wall here?
Yeah, Jesus. He has an out insofar as the injuries.
It's a big out. It's a big out.
It's a big. I agree. Listen, that's what I'm saying. So
yeah, but you don't mean it. I mean it when I say it.
Yeah, I do. But having said that, they should still be doing like that decimated Tottenham squad at Leicester 1-0 up should still win that game. And that's the question marks that I would have against Ange.
Yeah.
That it's difficult, man. I feel for the guy, but he's coming under pressure now. I mean, hopefully I suppose he's hoping that a lot of that pressure is directed towards upstairs and away from him. And maybe he gets a pass on it. But I think when you look at the other managers that were at Tottenham and what they're doing right now, it's a tough one.
Yeah. The likes of Iraola at Bournemouth, 17th lowest wage bill in the league, 12 fit senior players. There was the shot of all the injured players sitting in what used to be a TV studio. A lot of them watching the game at the weekend, and they keep doing what they're doing. It's performances like that which then put the Spurs' effort into less favourable light. You're not the only manager with problems here, Ange. That's where it's killer. And just the mutiny at the stadium, it's just getting messy. And he looks very, he's also looking like tired, a beaten, tired manager. That's what almost kills it a bit.
Yeah, he must not know where to turn right now. This is where you got to rely on your staff to help you out, to really help you see the wood from the trees, because his head will be spinning. He won't be getting any sleep. He'll be sleep deprived. He won't know whether he's coming or going. Whether do we change it up? Do we, change the routine of the week? They've probably tried all this stuff. Do we give the players time off? Do we get them in? Do we work them harder? Are they fit enough? I mean, that's where you need a good staff behind you. And I hope he has got that. But that's why I don't think it's as big a note as what you might think the Ange one is when you stated what you said there about Bournemouth. I think that decimated Tottenham squad should still be doing better than what it is.
Yeah. That is the killer. We are out of time. Thank you so much.
Here, Joe. Appreciate it.